You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News.
The question for today is there a room for rainbow in Asia? Now, before we answer that question, we need to talk about what being LGBT is like in Asia first, right? And in order to do that, I really have to talk about my story because, well, it's been a ride.
In honor of Pride Month this June, we commemorate the LGBTQIA+ community's ongoing struggle for equality, and we zoom in on our large corner of the world, Asia. In this episode, we track the latest developments through the stories of two activists who have lived all over the region.
I'm 50, I just turned 50 earlier this year, so coming out for me has been quite a journey. I was in the closet for like 40 years.
That's Charlene Liu, one of the speakers in a series of talks powered by the Hague Project Peace and Justice Foundation. She's an engineer and a co-founder of Shanghai PRIDE.
So I grew up in Malaysia, born and grew up in Malaysia. Muslim country, being gay is illegal. It still is. So I had my life pretty much set out for me, right? Get good grades, go to good university, get a good job, find a nice boy, get married, have kids, and then live happily ever after. Of course, that didn't happen. So I knew I liked girls from very, very young, and I thought, okay, maybe this is a phase, and going to an all-girls school did not help. So I thought, okay, I will go to the US, and then I will meet nice boy during my degree, and then, all be sorted. Of course, that didn't happen. So I said, okay, I'm just going to be in a closet forever and ever. Now, after graduation, I followed my then girlfriend to Singapore. Singapore, as you know, back then, now this was in like 1990s, still a crime to be gay.
When that relationship didn't work out, Charlene decided to relocate again.
Decided to run away and go to Shanghai, China. Why not? I didn't speak the language. Nobody knew me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go there, stay really low profile, don't meet nobody, don't talk to anybody, just keep my head down, work, make a lot of money, and then find a nice boy, have kids. That didn't happen.
Instead, she found community.
So I like to hang out, and we will always go to the same places because back then the scene is very small. We'll go to the same places, meet the same people, and then that meetup grew, became bigger, and then we decided, okay, in 2009, some of us were leaving the country, and we said, let's just throw them all a big party and call it Shanghai Pride. Of course, we were very naive. Shanghai Pride gained momentum, and we were only supposed to do it for 1 year, 2009. But then we saw the value of it. All the community allies saw the value of it and said that we need this because at the end of the day, we all need support, we all need to network. And as allies, we can also help. So at its peak, Shanghai Pride had about 30 over events in the course of 3 weeks and was supported by governments, by individuals, by businesses, by media as well. Of course, that didn't come without challenges, right? In the very beginning, 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, it was much easier to organize events such as Shanghai Pride. Sure, there were shutdowns, regular venue shutdowns. Organizers and venue owners were questioned by authorities, but we always managed. We were creative, and we managed to carry on. However, as we grew, we gained more momentum. We grew a little bigger. We grew a little bit more popular. The authorities and the scrutiny from the authorities became more intense. In 2019, we were slapped with a big fine for screening some movies. And some of our volunteers were taken into custody, questioned. Some were forced out of the country. I recently was forced out of the country based on similar circumstances. And then you see that across China, things like shutting down of social media accounts or university groups related to LGBT happen. And then Organizations such as LGBT Advocacy China and most recently Beijing LGBT Center had to cease operations.
Despite all this, Charlene remains hopeful.
But then elsewhere in Asia, I found there is the repeal of 377 in India, repeal of 377A in Singapore.
She's talking about the repeal of laws that criminalized homosexuality.
Pink Dot happened in Singapore, and then recently Bangkok Pride, and then you have folks, Asia Rainbow Ride coming out in October this year, and Gay Games Hong Kong coming out in November this year. So you see, in Asia, yes, it's very varied. You can see things not very good happening, but you can also see hope.
Her own coming out story, which played out over many years, has also kept Charlene hopeful.
Now, I came out in phases throughout my life. Shanghai Pride helped me. I first came out with friends easier because you don't really know them and they're your family of choosing. And then to colleagues. Most difficult was to mom. I had to come out to her 3 times. First time she thought I was crazy. I was sick. I said, no. Second time she said, again? And then third time I said, look, Mom, I'm getting married next week. Okay? So she's like, okay, do you really have to do this? Because there's no turning back. And then we left it as that. Now, I met my wife during Shanghai Pride, 2013, first Pride run. She basically ran into my life. We were married 2 years later on the beach of Hawaii. So that was the third time, remember, I said, I came out to my mom 3 times. Third time I said, we're going to Hawaii to get married. So I was driving along the road one day, my mom next to me, and she said, so you got married? Got a ring? Uh-huh. You got photos? Mm-hmm. And she said, so your grandmother left you a ring for when you get married, you can take it. Or in this case, you can give it to your wife. I just jammed on the brake, stopped right there, and started crying. Today, my wife and my mom, they're best friends. So shortly after that, I went back to my day job. And this is a new job for me. And then, when you go to work, you have to start writing your application form or say, okay. And then to the part where it says, are you married? Okay, I'll say yes. And this is still China. I was still afraid of being discriminated. What is your spouse's name? Do you have a marriage certificate? Yes, I do, from Hawaii. So I put it there, and you know what? 2 weeks later, I received 2 insurance cards, one for me and one for my wife. And that is something that just blew our minds. How is that possible? This is happening in China. So if you look at it, yes, there are thunderstorms in different parts of Asia. But then what happens after the rain is gone? There's always a rainbow, right?
In China, the government has forced the closure of a string of gay rights groups, including the pioneering Beijing LGBT Center. The group's mission was to improve the quality of life for sexual minorities. That involved providing counseling, swift HIV screening, as well as suing organizations that used electroshock therapy on gay people. The closures are seen by many analysts and activists as part of the increasingly repressive political environment under Communist Party rule. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, a 2022 Human Rights Watch report sounded the alarm over what it called state-backed discrimination causing harm to LGBTQIA+ people. It cited the imposition of criminal penalties, conversion therapy, and harmful rhetoric as factors that undermined basic human rights. We meet someone whose story takes us to Japan and Korea after a quick break.
Hey everybody, I'm Yuli Kim. I don't know, I feel like I'm just a middle-aged Asian mom who raised 3 children with her partner. But for me to be here today, or to get here today, I know people that I don't even know paved the way for me.
Yuli's a graduate of the Rotterdam School of Management at Erasmus University in Amsterdam. She currently works at Workplace Pride, which is also based in the Netherlands.
I'm from Japan, but my grandparents moved to Japan from South Korea before the World War ended in 1945. So I inherited a Korean citizenship. I have a Korean passport, but I'm also a permanent resident in Japan. My children also inherited my Korean passport. So when I got pregnant, I called the Korean embassy. And I was like, so how can I help you? And then, I'm pregnant and I'm married to a American woman and I'm going to give birth. And then my question is, can my child have Korean citizenship? They're like, what? I said, well, I'm basically lesbian and I'm married, but in the eyes of Korean family law, I'm not married. I'm a single woman giving birth in the Netherlands. Is that a complex case? They're like, no. So you can register your child, it's fine. Okay, great. So they helped me do that first time, and then that was done. I called them up. Hey, it's Yuli Kim again. I don't have to explain. Yuli Kim, the lesbian, so they know me. Hey, it's me. I'm pregnant again, so yeah, I'll see you soon. And I went. No problem. So we have 3 children, and the third one was a little bit different because my wife gave birth. And I registered him. I adopted him legally. So he's my son. I'm a parent in his birth certificate. And the Korean council didn't know how to handle it. And I said, hey, it's Yuli Kim. Like, what, Yuli Kim? Are you pregnant again? No, my wife is. They're like, oh my. Yuli Kim, you make my work very complicated and difficult. So the person she had to contact the family court in Korea to report, and then here's a case. She claims that this is her son. So long story short, I couldn't register him because I told them, this is my son, but they said, well, you have to come to Korea to do this paperwork and everything. I was like, well, I don't speak the language. I can't read Korean, so it's complicated. And so I searched, and they're a wonderful group of lawyers, volunteer lawyers in Korea who help LGBTIQ plus people like me in Korea. I said, well, I'm a little far, but you can help me. So, but they found my case very interesting because they were always fighting for marriage equality and then other issues, but they saw the angle. Well, you have a child, and it's about the child, and he deserves justice. He deserves to be registered as yours. And found out it's not so much of a marriage equality issue when it comes to registering him. It's more of the adoption, complication in international adoption in Korea. I think most Korean couples, heterosexual or single people, adopt children in Korea, and there are not a lot of international adoptions. And then in many Asian countries, the blood relation from father's side is quite significant when it comes to having the surname passed on. The lawyer said, well, you can do the easy way. Just register him as yours and don't try to make this case too complicated. Just there's an easy way to register him in Korea. Or do the difficult way. Well, how often do you get to challenge the government? So I said, let's do the harder way. Let's make them, know that I exist. And I thought the Korean council here, the person, Miss Kim, of course, Miss Kim said, well, I asked around, but you're the first Korean woman has a same-sex partner and adopting a child outside of Korea. I was like, really? Am I the first? But we decided to push a little bit further along. Like, maybe we can help the next generation to do this much easier. Like somebody that I don't know 20 plus years ago in the Netherlands fought for them and for us too. So that's my little story in terms of being a trailblazer. I had never idea that I would be doing this, but I didn't want to sort of sit back and relax and appreciate all the benefits that people worked so hard for. And it's my time to at least try to pass that along for the next generation.
So what does Yuli think of the state of LGBTQIA plus rights in Asia?
So before the rainbow, it always rains, right? And then the sun, you feel the warmth. And in terms of Japan and Korea, I think I feel the warmth, the sun. So in terms of marriage equality in Japan, I'm not a plaintiff because I don't live there, but my friends are. So they're challenging on the district level, challenge the constitution in Japan because marriage is defined between two sexes. It doesn't say between man and woman. But the government's interpretation of that is like, well, we didn't assume you guys, like when we set this up. Well, we exist. So there's a case in Tokyo, Sapporo, and Nagoya, and maybe Osaka. So Nagoya recently ruled that it's anti-constitutional that same-sex people cannot get married in Japan. So, of course, the government's going to take it to the higher level. So it might take some time, but lawyers' strategy is to change the people's mindset, like public opinion. So that's the strategy. And then the longer it drags for the government, the less likely, the people are changing. Society is changing.
Unfortunately, progress is not a straight line. Every improvement in one country is often met with a step back in another. Last year, Singapore decriminalized sex between men, but Indonesia updated its criminal code to penalize sex outside of marriage, in a move seen as deliberately targeting the gay community. In Taiwan, the only country in Asia where same-sex marriage is legal, gay couples were given the right to adopt this year. But here in the Philippines, the anti-discrimination bill is stuck at the committee level in the Senate. Versions of the bill have languished there for over 2 decades now. But for all the ways that Asia may be lagging behind in terms of legislation, advocates are optimistic that a breakthrough is on the horizon for some countries. And when that does happen, they believe the transition may not be as difficult as it's been in other parts of the world.
I think that the difference between the U.S. And Japan, because my partner is from the U.S., but I think when Japanese people get it, it'll go fast. But once they make the decisions, it goes pretty fast. And unlike, for example, the U.S., you can get married to a same-sex partner and you can adopt children, but there's still such hate. It's so polarized. And when we go to the U.S., I don't quite feel safe to be out. Just because legal system is implemented or there doesn't mean that people are safe, right? Yes. In Japan, we don't have the legal system protection, but people live pretty normal, like an okay life. Well, not the same rights, so that's a problem. But our life is not threatened in a way.
Like don't have the physical attack.
Right. So they need to come together, the legal protection, but also cultural shift or acceptance, and that might take time. But at least we need legal framework, like a system in place, and that's what people are fighting for.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was edited by Pedoy Blanco. A few months ago, we published an episode on LGBTQIA+ rights that focused on our region. Just search for 1 step forward, 2 steps back for LGBTQIA+ rights across Southeast Asia this year to hear it on your podcast app. And follow Teka Teka News on your favorite podcast app or listen to us for free on YouTube. Thanks for listening.